The stray dog hadn't eaten for weeks. Food bowls, bread, even meat. He refused them all, his eyes full of fear and pain. People gave up, thinking he'd never survive. But then, a boy stepped forward and did something no one expected. What happened next left everyone speechless. Before we start, make sure to hit like, share, and subscribe. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. The neighborhood had grown used to seeing him. A lonely German shepherd, thin and trembling, sat curled up near an old fence by the roadside. His fur was dusty, his ribs visible, and his eyes carried the kind of sadness that made even the toughest passerby pause for a moment. People would stop and stare. Some whispered that the dog must have been abandoned. Others guessed he was simply too weak to go on. Children pointed at him, but their parents quickly pulled them away, fearing he might lash out if touched. Yet, despite his fragile frame, he never barked, never chased, never begged. He just sat there, watching. What puzzled everyone most was his refusal to eat. Neighbors left scraps, bowls of rice, and even pieces of meat beside him. But every morning, the food was still there, untouched. To many, it felt like he had already given up on life. Still, there was something in his eyes, a silent plea for help, waiting for the right person to notice. As days turned into weeks, the stray became part of the neighborhood's routine. People noticed him lying in the same spot, head resting on his paws, eyes distant like he was waiting for someone who never came back. The children gave him nicknames, Shadow, Rusty, even Soldier, but none of them dared to go near. Neighbors tried everything to feed him. One old woman left warm bowls of milk by his side. A shopkeeper brought leftover bread from his store. Even a butcher once placed fresh bones beside the fence. Yet, morning after morning, the food remained untouched. The stray would only sniff, turn his head, and let out a sigh that broke hearts. Some began to call him cursed, while others believed he was mourning a lost master. The truth was no one really knew. All they saw was a starving dog, refusing the very thing that could save him. And just when everyone was about to give up on him, one boy decided to do something different. Among all the people who passed the stray each day, there was one boy who couldn't look away. His name was Daniel, a quiet 12-year-old with curious eyes and a heart too big for his age. While others walked past quickly, Daniel stopped, crouched down, and studied the dog carefully. The stray's fur was matted, his ribs were showing, and yet, his eyes told a different story. They weren't wild or threatening. They were filled with pain, trust, and a strange sense of longing. Daniel felt something stir inside him, something he couldn't explain. Day after day, he returned. Sometimes he sat on the curb, sketching in his notebook while sneaking glances at the dog. Other times, he would gently set a piece of bread near the fence, whispering softly, "It's okay. I'm not here to hurt you." But the stray never touched it. Still, Daniel didn't give up. He wasn't just offering food. He was offering patience, kindness, and something far more powerful, hope. One chilly afternoon, Daniel arrived. Again, carrying a small bowl of food he had saved from his own lunch. He placed it carefully on the ground, but just like before, the dog turned his head away. People passing by chuckled, shaking their heads. "That much hopeless," someone muttered. But Daniel didn't move. Instead, he did something no one expected. He slid the bowl aside, sat cross-legged on the pavement, and pulled out a sandwich. Slowly, he took a bite, then placed the rest of it on the ground in front of him. Then, in a whisper barely above the rustling wind, he said, "See? It's safe. I'll eat with you." The stray tilted his head, confused. Never before had anyone tried to share a meal. Not like this. Daniel tore off a piece, ate another bite himself, then pushed a small piece closer to the dog's paws. His voice was calm, his movements gentle. For the first time, the dog's nose twitched. The dog's body trembled as he lowered his head, nostrils flaring at the unfamiliar scent of bread and meat. His ribs pressed sharply against his thin skin, proof of weeks without proper food. And yet, fear still held him back. His eyes darted to Daniel, searching for a trap. Daniel didn't flinch. He tore off another piece of the sandwich and placed it closer, his hand steady. "It's yours," he whispered softly. He even leaned back a little, giving the stray space. The moment stretched like forever. Then, finally, The dog inched forward. His tongue flicked out, snatching the tiny piece before he darted back to his corner. A collective gasp came from the few onlookers nearby. But Daniel smiled. He didn't celebrate or move too quickly. Instead, he quietly placed another piece down, letting the dog know there was no rush. Slowly, piece by piece, the wall between them began to crack. For the first time, hope flickered in the boy's eyes. The next day, Daniel returned to the same spot, clutching another sandwich. He half feared the dog would be gone, but there he was, curled up under the same bench, his dull eyes watching. This time, Daniel didn't go straight to food. He sat cross-legged on the ground a short distance away, humming softly as he opened the sandwich. He tore a piece and gently slid it across the pavement. The dog hesitated, but not as long as before. His nose twitched, paws inching forward until he grabbed the food and retreated. Daniel chuckled softly. See? I'm not so bad. He placed another piece, a little closer to his knee. The dog crept forward again, this time leaving a paw print just inches from Daniel's leg. For the first time, Daniel noticed something change. The dog's eyes, once hard and guarded, now carried a flicker of curiosity. It wasn't trust, not yet, but it was the first step toward it. And that was enough to make Daniel's heart race with hope. On the third afternoon, Daniel came prepared with the same routine. He sat down, humming quietly as if it were their secret song. Piece by piece, he slid the food closer to himself, until finally the last crumb rested on his open palm. The stray stared, frozen in indecision. His ribs rose and fell quickly, as though even breathing was a risk. Daniel didn't move, didn't blink. He simply whispered, "It's okay, boy. I promise." After what felt like forever, the dog lowered his head and crept forward. Each step was shaky, uncertain, but unstoppable. His cold nose brushed against Daniel's trembling hand before snatching the morsel. Then something remarkable happened. The dog didn't bolt back to the shadows. He lingered, sniffing Daniel's wrist, his wet nose pressing against skin that had waited days for this moment. Daniel's eyes filled with tears. That tiny touch, a fragile connection, meant the walls were beginning to crumble. The boy smiled through the lump in his throat. "You're safe now. I won't hurt you." The next day, Daniel returned, his heart racing with anticipation. This time, he didn't even need to coax the dog. The moment the boy sat down, the stray trotted toward him, tail wagging timidly, eyes no longer sharp with fear, but soft with hope. When Daniel held out his hand, the dog pressed his head into it, as though he had been waiting his whole life for this touch. The boy's arms wrapped around the frail body, and for the first time in years, the stray allowed himself to be held. His trembling stopped, replaced by quiet, steady breaths. Neighbors who had once avoided the snarling creature stood in awe. "I don't believe it," one whispered. The unthinkable had happened. This broken, starving dog had found trust in a boy's simple kindness. From that day on, Daniel and the stray became inseparable. Where the boy went, the dog followed. Two lost souls had healed each other, proving one small act of love could change everything.